Hello, Bible readers. It is Monday, November 23rd. We are reading a bunch of Psalms today, 18, 121, 123 through 125, and 128 through 130. And then Acts chapter 9, verse 20 through chapter 10, verse 8. So let me just knock off each psalm with like a line or two each. Psalm 18, this is one of the longest and most literarily complex. Keep hope alive is its theme. It is a long one. Psalm 121. This is the most famous psalm of our group today. You might note that who made heaven and earth is a line that those who wrote the Apostles' Creed chose to take. So who made heaven and earth? That's a Psalm 121 note. Psalm 123. A psalm for every generation, not terribly specific as far as what audience it's aimed at. 124, admitting we need help is more of a radical thing to say than we give credit for. It's admitting that we can't do it all on our own, that we require help as humans. 125, the faith of God's people is always lived in hope, proclaiming God's rule in the face of wickedness, peace amidst chaos. Living in hope can be hard to do. A psalm is meant to sustain us in that hope, knowing that people have sung this and prayed this forever. 128, happy. This is always a word that can be challenging in Scripture. Happy is not a reward for proper living, as though I'll be happy if I. It's not an earned thing. Happy is a way of seeing the work and family of this life as a gift. It's a blessing. That's what this psalm is trying to say. 129, there will always be external opposition to God. No matter what, there's always going to be forces outside of ourselves that call God false, that pull us away from the true God. The faithful will bear that. That's when Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me. He's not saying, oh, that personal burden that stinks for your life. Jesus is talking about the external forces of this world are going to fight. And so each person, if you're going to follow me, you're going to have to bear that. And then Psalm 130, there's always, as much as 129 is about there's going to be external opposition to God, Psalm 130 is about there will always be internal opposition to God. And knowing that about ourselves, we seek God's mercy and receive it, we believe. Okay, the Acts passages. Paul's reception in Jerusalem is where we start, it's interesting. Paul in Galatians and in 2 Corinthians is going to talk about his recollections of his conversion story and then his early ministry. Happily, lots of what he says as far as the order of things and his experience of things agrees with what Luke says about those things in the book of Acts. Some, of course, does not. The order of things is a little different as far as how Paul remembers them as opposed to how Luke writes them. And really, as academics and historians have looked at this, they say that's okay. That actually tells scholars they were probably writing independently from each other. It's not like one was looking at the other. It was like, oh, mine's got to match his. And by believing that they're independently written apart from each other, that does give credibility to the stuff that they do agree on, which is most of Paul's order of things and how those things actually were experienced. And remember, we're not seeking out a history. A gospel is not a history. The Acts of the Apostles is not a history. But in Paul's story, it does help us to interpret what Luke or Paul is trying to accomplish by seeing what things maybe actually happened versus what things are said to have happened in a certain way, what parts contribute toward the storytelling. So it does help us interpret to know which things maybe did happen and maybe which things didn't happen quite like that. In his return to Jerusalem, Luke has Paul opposing the forces he recently led. It's quite a turnaround. And then that, of course, gets him in trouble, which fulfills the prophecy. As Jesus said, Paul, you're going to have to suffer in my name. And so here we see that starting to happen. Then we see the wonders of Peter. First, he's a kind of circuit rider. What an image that is, that Peter's just kind of going around to different parts of the church, seeing how things are going. And then he heals a paralytic and resuscitates a widow. Do these kinds of healings sound familiar? You know, Jesus healing the paralytic, Elijah and Elisha resuscitating a widow. I think that's on purpose, right? Luke does this a lot. And then we start into the story of Cornelius that I'm going to save for tomorrow. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.